Hi everybody, welcome to the Azure On Air podcast. Today I'm joined by Andrew Rivers from 345 Technology, and I love chatting with Andrew, putting aside the fact that we're both really keen golfers and we chat a lot about golf. I love chatting with Andrew about technology stuff, particularly integration, and we've done a lot of work with the 345 Technology team over the years, and I'm really keen to get him on the podcast because I think he does a lot of really good YouTube stuff from his company, just sharing some architecture experiences. And I think he's a gold mine of information that we can share with people via the podcast today. So welcome on board, Andrew.
Great to be here, Mike.
Yeah. Really, I think we were, first off, how are you finding the event so far? I guess what's jumped out for you?
Obviously, you can't escape from AI, I think is the first, the first thing we take away from the event. The other thing, though, is just having some really, really good discussions with people. There's been some very open conversations about, what does the future look like?
Yeah.
Even, how does AI and integration fit together? What's the story there? So just cannot overemphasize to people really that if they're not looking at AI, someone else is going to be, and it's it's one of those. I think I was having the conversation this morning with someone actually that it looks really daunting when you see some of the things that you're capable of achieving with the AI services. And if you don't know how to put them together, it can just look so intimidating. And yet, when you unpeel it and see what people have done, it's actually so attainable. Yeah. So there's this big disconnect at the moment between what it looks like and actually what's behind the cover. And the reason is because all the heavy lifting's already been done by the services and
focused on the value rather than the frameworks.
And it's how you apply that. The frameworks are so powerful.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I think that's what I would first say to everyone, certainly from the impressions I've had, is that just take this stuff for a test drive.
Yeah.
If not, you can talk to Microsoft or talk to me or talk to someone, just because people can help you.
So how, tell me about as a partner, say the last year since last integrate and thinking forward to next integrate, how do you think this stuff's going to influence the way you as a system integrator drives the business you do with customers?
There are a number of threads in that. So one of the things with us coming from being a system integrator is, traditionally system integrators make their money from putting solutions together and charge, and ultimately we've got a load of really clever people that we charge them out by the day to build solutions. Now with generative AI, the time to build solutions is going to compress. And so, and this is great for customers. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you look at a trend over a number of years, they're going to get solutions much more cheaply. Mm. However, as things move on, they're going to want to change them continuously. So the shape of engagement is going to change from much quicker time to value using generative AI, which for us means, in terms of the business model, maybe cheaper projects for customers, but then how do we then look after that solution, keep it current, make sure it continues to take advantage of the opportunities that are there? So it's going to be much more like managed service. You've got to evergreen things in the cloud anyway, but the pace at which the AI services are coming out and that sort of thing, there's going to be so much ongoing work.
One of the big ways I feel that's going to help is, it's really difficult in integration that you don't have the predictability of what you're going to build, and things often, you're building a project and you only really know 70% of what you really needed to do, and there's a huge element of figuring it out as you go. And I think the AI can maybe help with a lot of that unpredictability. Do you think?
Not if it's in people's heads, but I mean half the issue, and this is back to the perennial challenge we have, is that, and what you said there alludes to that if we had 70% of the requirements, that would be really good. And it's where is that other thing? But I think the thing that's probably quite good about that is that when you do get those requirements, you can respond much faster.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
I think that's the thing that happens, because these things always come out of the woodwork. It's how fast you can respond and how painful or painless that is. So I think that's what I'm quite excited about, is being able to make that journey a lot better. Because we all start projects with the best of intentions, and then you get a certain point down and oh yeah, we forgot to tell you about this. And the more we can sort of say, that's okay, we can deal with it, rather than that's really bad news and it's going to cost you a lot of money. I think everyone's experience is going to be a lot better there.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we talked quite a lot about migration this week. So tell me, from 345 perspective, how do you find the landscape around migration projects at the moment? I'm assuming BizTalk's a big element of that, but what kind of things are you seeing going on in that space?
There's a lot going on in migrations. One strand of that is BizTalk, and because BizTalk's a Microsoft technology and we're at a Microsoft Tech conference, BizTalk migration is a big theme, and we know that there's a cut-off date. Well, mainstream support ends 2028, 2030 is the final date. So there's that kind of legacy risk element on BizTalk. And we're talking to a lot of people. We're doing BizTalk migration projects. That's an ongoing thing now. And I really feel like we've been talking about BizTalk migration for a long time, but I feel like the momentum is
picking up.
Is picking up. Certainly, one of the things we offer is a packaged migration assessment service where, with like a 2-week turnaround, we'll take an export of their BizTalk apps, run a load of tooling over it, and we'll tell them what's the cost, what's the timescale, and what are the technical risks for their migration, target architecture, how much their Azure running costs are likely to be, and because we know BizTalk inside out, and we know Azure inside out, and we can do that so certainly a lot of people are interested in that, in that thing of, maybe for next year's budget, how much do I need?
Yeah.
Not necessarily I'm going to do it right now, but I need to start planning. What can I put in next year's budget? But that's the BizTalk stuff. Now, interestingly, there's a lot of other integration platforms that maybe at a conference like this don't get a lot of airing. So things like Software AG, we're migrating customers off Software AG into Azure. Particularly because some of the older versions of that, like Software AG Web Methods, they've either got to get onto the new Software AG, or they've got to go into Azure, and they're looking at the costs of that, and the costs of going into Azure, that are quite compelling compared to the alternatives. Another big one is Boomi.
Yeah.
Boomi used to be owned by Dell. Dell have divested it, but they're people are finding their cost model uncompetitive, and but I suppose the big one, mainly because of how many installations there are, is MuleSoft, and MuleSoft is a very, very expensive product. And you look at you can compare MuleSoft licensing costs with Azure running costs, and it's no exaggeration to say that you can maybe save 80%. And MuleSoft's it's chunky license fee.
I think you guys did some good webinars about this. I think I remember, didn't you? If anyone wants to check those out.
Yeah, we've definitely done some videos on that.
Yeah.
I can't remember now whether it's webinars or videos, but we've definitely done some stuff in that space. But again, a lot of people who are doing projects based on Salesforce kind of get the MuleSoft cross sell, and then they get MuleSoft, and it's all in, and then they look at what the running costs are, and they find it hard to justify. They find it hard to justify 7-figure running costs for an integration platform that could be.
I think there's been a big shift for me over the last few years. I remember when API management products were fairly new, and there was a lot of vendors that were really expensive, and then you talk like 6-figure plus for them, and then I remember when Azure started first offering API management, and it kind of became more of a commodity service than a premium service. And I think the same is kind of happening with iPaaS now, isn't it? Where customers are realizing that actually integration's everywhere, and it's not this specialist thing we'll pay an absolute fortune for. We want it more as like a commodity service across the board, which makes Azure's offering quite compelling, I think, when you see them migrations.
There are so many strands to that as well, because even if you just start with skills, that if you've got a lot of other native Azure services, then certainly operationally all the Azure integration services fit within that operations bucket. And so I don't need a different ops team for my integration platform, because I'm looking at the same dashboards, I'm looking at the same app insights, looking at the same alerts. So just unifying that operational experience is quite compelling. But also from a developer skill set, it's the transferability of skills on Azure compared to some of the other integration platforms. Just the availability of skills is so much more. And we've had some of the great stuff we've had from Wagner at this conference, just making that developer experience even better, being able to do the code-based workflows, being able to do the unit testing. There's just so much good stuff in there in terms of developer enablement.
Yeah, I think that's some of the stuff Wagner's talking about really standardizes. Again, your point about the operational side being consistent, starting to happen with the developer experience now, isn't it? So your DevOps pipelines, they're not hugely different from function apps and web apps and other stuff, and then codeful workflows sort of introduces the C# developer to be able to build stateful workflows. Yeah,
and it's and suddenly you find that the leap from being a C# developer to being an integration developer is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. There's kind of an interesting side aspect to that integration. Those of us that have been around it for a long time know that it's very pattern based, and so whilst the developer tool set is all merging, one of the other problem sets we're dealing with is still what does it take really to go from zero to hero for an integration developer, and patterns and the concepts are the key. The coding skills are actually getting the same, but it's more of that kind of what do the design patterns look like? How do I think about these things? Because applications are where people do tasks and do things, and they generate data, and integration is more about process.
How do you feel the patterns are, I think, are a really interesting one, because I guess through all the iterations over the years, the patterns have kind of stayed the same, but do you think the new AI things we're talking about, this introduces new patterns that we maybe are just starting to think about? I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
There are definitely new AI-based patterns. I think it's like there's always going to be the golden oldie integration patterns. That publish and subscribe is just such a core fundamental pattern, and a lot of and certainly when you're using Gen AI to develop solutions, those will still come out with those patterns. But I think we're in a really exciting space with the AI that new patterns are going to emerge. I mean, even if we look at the MCP stuff, and we look at the agentic workflows and those sort of things, that those are brand new things. And those will crystallize into new patterns. And I think like I say, integration patterns haven't changed for 20, 25 years. Then suddenly we've got a new set that are emerging, and it is an emergent thing. But those will start to crystallize, I think, over the next the next 2 or 3 years. Suddenly we'll find that we've got a whole new set of agentic AI-based patterns that
really great. So I think we're quite close to time on the podcast, Andrew. Is there any bits that you'd really like to share from what you've learned at the conference this week that I haven't really thought to ask you about? Anything jumping out?
I mean, we've kicked off with the AI, so I don't need to labour on that. But one of the things that I like to come to the conference for is just more to just understand the themes of where things are going. And I'm quite interested to see the way that behind the scenes, everything is unifying. So there's a massive amount of the fabric stuff bleeding into integration, which is bleeding into AI. But underneath the bonnet, all this stuff is being built on the same technology. And I'm that's where I'm really interested now, is to sort of see where it's like the tectonic plates are shifting at the moment. And that's what I find fascinating. So that's one of the big things I'm taking away from that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks,
and look forward to speaking to you the rest of the afternoon at the event.
Great stuff. Yeah,
Take care.
You too.